Okay, now we're happy with high and low level languages, and we're aware that high level languages need to be converted into machine code so they'll run on the computer. We've just got to look at different types of what we call translation software. So that's the software that's going to convert our high level language into a low level language. So I've just written that there, translation software needed to convert high level language into low level language. So we're taking our statement print hello, and we need to turn that into the ones and zeros so it will run on the computer into machine code. Let's look at the first one. The first one's called an interpreter. So I've got some Python code here: a equals 1, b equals 2, c equals a plus b, print c. So it's going to take a and b, add them together, and then output it on the screen. If you type that high level language, that Python code, and then you used an interpreter, how it would work is this: it would take each line, so line 1, and it would convert that into its machine code equivalent. Then it will take line 2 and convert that into its machine code equivalent. Then it will take line 3, convert that into its machine code equivalent, take line 4, convert that into its machine code equivalent. Each time it converts one of the lines, it will run that statement. It'll execute that statement. So this line of machine code here, so we convert a equals 1 into machine code, we then execute that line. Convert b equals 2 into machine code, execute that line. Then we add a plus b and store them in the variable c, and then we print the answer to the screen. So an interpreter takes each line of your high level language, in turn converts it into machine code and runs it. So take each line in turn, convert to machine code, and execute. So that's how an interpreter works. So advantages. So the first advantage is that as long as you've installed the interpreter, your code will work on any computer. So the interpreter is the software that's going to convert the high level language into the low level language. As long as you have interpreter installed, code will run on any PC. So that's a pretty good advantage. Another advantage is that because each line of code runs one after the other, when you're developing your code, let's say you had an error on this line here, these first two lines will still run because it runs each line in turn. So these two lines will run, so you know they're fine. It'll get to this line and then the error will occur. So that's quite useful, that's quite helpful when you're developing code. So disadvantage. So the main disadvantage is it's slow. It's slow because every time you want to run it, it has to convert each line into machine code and then execute that line. So every time you run, the interpreter converts every line of code and executes it. And we call this the source code. So the original code you write, we call that the source code. Okay, so it's slow. Every time you want to run your source code, the interpreter has to convert each line. Another disadvantage is, now this depends on what you want to do with it, but the user can see your source code. Okay, so that is a disadvantage if you don't want people to benefit from your code and to be able to sort of take your code easily and use it themselves. So the interpreter they actually have to have the source code, and then the interpreter will convert it into the ones and zeros. Okay, so advantages: as long as you've got the interpreter software installed, then your source code will run on any computer. Main disadvantage: it's really slow. Each time you want to run it, every single time you run it, it has to convert each line into machine code and then execute each line in turn. Okay, right, so that's interpreter. What we'll do next is we'll have a look at the next one, which is called a compiler.